Have you ever felt older than your actual age? Have you ever looked back at your childhood and realized it ended much sooner than it did for the people around you? That while other kids were playing, you were already worried, already responsible, already making sure everything was okay. If you have, this video is for you. There is a term in psychology for what happened to you. It's called being a parentified child. But don't let that word intimidate you. It simply means this: a child who was asked by life, by circumstance, by the people around them to grow up before they were ready. It doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like a 10-year-old making dinner because mom is too tired. Sometimes it looks like a 12-year-old listening to dad cry after a divorce. Sometimes it looks like a teenager who never, not once, let themselves fall apart because they couldn't afford to. And here is what most people don't realize. Those children grow up. They become adults. They go to work, build relationships, laugh at dinner tables. But inside, quietly, that child is still there, still waiting, still holding everything together, still terrified of what happens if they stop. Today, we are going to look at that child. We are going to look at where they came from, what they carry, what they're capable of, and most importantly, how they can finally rest. This kind of childhood doesn't look the same for everyone. It comes in different shapes, different rooms, different silences, but there are patterns, and maybe you'll recognize yourself in one of them. The first is what we might call the caretaker. This is the child who cooked, who cleaned, who made sure the younger siblings ate. Maybe one parent was sick, or struggling with depression, or simply not able to show up. And so, the child showed up instead. They became the quiet adult in the room. They learned to read the mood of the house the moment they walked through the door. They learned that their job, before homework, before play, before anything, was to make sure everyone else was okay. And after a divorce, sometimes this child became something even heavier. They became the emotional companion to a parent. The parent would share things with them: worries, loneliness, anger at the other parent. And the child would listen, would comfort, would carry it. Not because they chose to, but because no one else was there. Pause for a moment. Do you recognize that child? The second face is the little adult. This child was given a different kind of pressure, not the pressure of chores or emotional labor, but the pressure of expectation. They had to be the best student, the most impressive one, the pride of the family. Every grade was loaded with meaning. Every mistake was too heavy to make. Love, in this house, felt like it was connected to performance. Be good enough, and you are loved. Fall short, and something shifts in the room. Something gets cold. This child learned to tie their worth to what they could achieve. They became excellent at many things. But inside, underneath all that excellence, there was a child who was exhausted. A child who never felt like they were quite enough. The third face is the invisible child. This is perhaps the quietest one. This child grew up in chaos. Maybe there was violence in the house. Maybe a parent struggled with addiction. Maybe the environment was just unpredictable, loud. One day, absent the next. And so this child made a decision, not consciously, but deeply. They decided to disappear, to not take up space, to handle everything on their own, to never be one more problem for anyone to deal with. They learned to swallow their feelings before anyone could see them. They learned to self-soothe in the dark. They became very good at surviving alone. 3 children, 3 different houses, but all 3 grew up carrying something that was never meant to be theirs. When we look at a child like this, the first question is always, how does this happen? How does a child end up in that position? The most common root is a family that is, in some way, not functioning the way a family should. This doesn't always mean an evil or cruel family. Often, it means a family in pain. A parent who is struggling with their own depression and doesn't have the strength to be present. A parent who was never taught how to regulate their own emotions, so they lean on their child to help carry them. A parent who is physically present but emotionally somewhere else entirely. Psychologists call this role reversal. The child becomes the parent. The parent becomes the one who needs care, and the child, because they love their parent, because they are desperate to keep the family together, steps into that role without anyone asking them to, because on some level, they feel that if they don't, everything will fall apart. Broken families, divorce, addiction, illness. These are not the only causes, but they are the most common doors through which this kind of childhood walks in. Then there are the economic and cultural forces. Poverty is a kind of accelerator. When there is not enough money, children grow up faster because they have to. They take jobs. They help manage finances. Children of immigrants often become translators, not just of language, but of an entire world. At 10 years old, they are navigating government offices, medical appointments, and legal documents on behalf of their parents. They are bridges between two worlds. And that is a remarkable thing. But it is also an enormous thing to carry at such a young age. And then there is culture, particularly in many Eastern cultures, and this deserves to be said gently but honestly. The image of the good child is one who is obedient, who helps, who never complains, who makes the family proud. Independence at a young age is celebrated. Maturity in a child is praised. "Isn't she so grown up?" is said with admiration. "He never causes any trouble," is said with pride. But sometimes, hidden inside that praise, is a child who learned that they had no permission to be young, no permission to be messy or lost or confused, no permission to be a child at all. The culture didn't mean harm, but the harm happened anyway. And finally, there is the deeper layer, the one inside the child's own mind and body. This is not a choice. It is a survival strategy. A child's brain is wired for one thing above everything else: to be safe and to be loved. And when the environment is unpredictable or emotionally unsafe, the brain adapts. It begins to operate on a simple but powerful belief: if I am good enough, if I take care of everyone, if I never fall apart, then things will be okay. Then I will be safe. Then I will be loved. That belief gets written into the child so deeply that they carry it into every relationship, every job, every quiet moment of their adult life, long after the original danger has passed. These children grow up, and when they do, the world often looks at them and says, "Wow, you turned out so well. You're so responsible, so capable, so strong." And they smile, and they say thank you. And inside, there is a quiet ache that they don't quite have words for. Because strength built out of necessity, out of fear, leaves marks. The first mark is around control. When you grow up in a world that felt chaotic or unsafe, you learn that the only thing that keeps everything from falling apart is you. And so you hold on to everything. You plan. You prepare. You think 3 steps ahead. You struggle to hand things over to someone else because somewhere, deep inside, you still believe that if you let go, even for a moment, something will go wrong. And when things don't go according to plan, the anxiety that rises in you is not small. It is not proportional to the situation. It is the anxiety of a child who once felt the whole house resting on their shoulders. The second mark is what happens in relationships. These people tend to be drawn to others who are struggling. Unconsciously, they find the person in the room who needs saving, because that is what love has always looked like to them. Love is labor. Love is being needed. And so they give and give and give until one day they look up and realize they are completely empty. And no one thought to ask if they were okay. This is sometimes called chronic caretaking, and it leads to a particular kind of exhaustion that is very hard to explain to people who haven't felt it. The third mark is perhaps the most invisible. It is the disconnection from themselves. There is a condition that psychologists describe as difficulty identifying your own emotions. The idea is simple but painful. Some people are incredibly good at reading other people's feelings and completely lost when it comes to their own. Ask them what they need, and they go quiet. Ask them what they enjoy, and they pause for a long time before answering, because for most of their life, those questions were never relevant. The only questions that mattered were, what does she need? What does he feel? How can I fix this? They spent so long reacting to others that they never learned what it felt like to simply be themselves. The fourth mark is fear. 2 fears, actually, living side by side. The first is the fear of being abandoned, not a logical fear. A deep, bodily fear. A fear that says, if I stop being useful, if I stop being needed, if I stop performing, they will leave. This fear makes them hypersensitive in relationships. A text that takes too long to be answered. A moment where someone seems distant. a small change in tone. These things land on them much harder than they probably should, because they aren't just reacting to the present moment. They are reacting to a very old belief. And living right next to that fear is its opposite, the fear of being a burden. They feel guilty when they are sick. They feel guilty when they are sad. They feel guilty when they need something. The idea of asking for help feels almost physically wrong to them. And so they withdraw. They handle it alone. They say, "I'm fine," so many times that they start to believe it. And underneath both of these fears is the question they rarely allow themselves to ask out loud. Does anyone love me? The real me? Or do they only love what I do for them? The fifth mark is perfectionism. Failure, for these people, is not just disappointing. It feels like proof of something terrible about themselves. Because they were taught, not in words, but in the way life worked, that their value was in their performance. So they work too hard. They demand too much of themselves. And they almost never let themselves simply enjoy something without it needing to be productive. And the sixth mark, possibly the loneliest one, is self-sufficiency taken too far. They become so capable of taking care of themselves that, eventually, no one can reach them. They never ask for help. They never show need. And so the people around them assume they don't need anything, and they become lonely in a way that is very hard to describe. Surrounded by people, admired by many, and yet profoundly, quietly, alone. Because no one sees what it costs, and they are too practiced at hiding it to show anyone. But here is where the story turns. Because everything that wound them also shaped them, and what was forged in those hard years is genuinely extraordinary. The first gift is empathy, but not ordinary empathy. These people carry something like an emotional radar. They walk into a room and they sense the undercurrents immediately. They know when someone is not okay, even when that person is smiling. They know what to say, and more importantly, what not to say. They can sit with someone in pain without trying to fix it too quickly. This makes them the kind of friend people call at 2 in the morning, the kind of therapist who changes lives, the kind of manager who remembers that there is a whole human being behind every job title. The second gift is reliability. True, deep, bone-level reliability. When this person makes you a promise, they keep it. When there is a crisis, they are the one who stays calm. They have been managing crises since childhood. A difficult deadline, a complicated situation, an unexpected problem. These things activate them rather than paralyze them. They already have a backup plan. They already thought 3 steps ahead. They are the person everyone calls when things get hard, and they show up every time. The third gift is wisdom, a kind of seeing that comes from having lived through things that most people only read about. They are rarely distracted by the surface of things. They understand the real value of stability, of a quiet evening, of a meal that didn't cost much, but was made with care. They are hard to fool and easy to trust. They see through drama to what actually matters. And the fourth gift is gratitude, real gratitude. Not the kind you perform, the kind that lives in your chest when something simple goes right. When someone shows up, when kindness arrives unexpectedly. Having known what it is to feel unseen, they notice deeply when they are seen. Having known scarcity, emotional scarcity, or real physical scarcity, they do not take small things for granted. These are not small gifts. These are rare and extraordinary qualities. And they came from real places. They cost something real. They deserve to be honored. So where does this leave you, if you recognized yourself in this video? In the caretaker, in the invisible child, in the perfectionist, in the one who is always fine? Then the most important thing I want to say to you is this. What happened to you was real, and it mattered. The first step is simply allowing yourself to see it clearly, not with anger, necessarily, not with blame, but with honesty. When you catch yourself saying, "I was always mature for my age," try, just once, to hear what lives underneath that sentence. Try saying instead, "I paid a price to be that mature. I gave something up, and I didn't get to choose." That recognition, that quiet acknowledgement, is where healing begins. The second step is harder. It asks you to do something that probably feels ridiculous, or even wrong. It asks you to allow yourself to be less than perfect, to rest when you haven't earned it yet, to say no without building a case for why, to do something completely pointless, something that brings you joy, for no reason at all, and to not feel guilty about it. These things sound simple. For most people, they are simple. For you, they may feel like breaking a rule that has kept you safe your whole life. And in a way, you are breaking the old rule that says your worth is in your usefulness. You are learning, slowly, to just exist, without performing, without managing, without holding everything together. You are allowed to be a person, not just a function. The third step is about the story you tell yourself, deep inside, in a part of your mind that you rarely look at directly. There is an old belief. It says, I have to be strong, I have to be needed, I have to be careful not to be too much for anyone. That belief made sense once. It kept you safe when you were small. But you are not small anymore, and the world is not the same room it was, so try, gently, without force, to offer yourself a different thought. Something like, I am not that child anymore. I don't have to earn my place here. I am allowed to need things. I am allowed to be loved without having to be useful first. If that feels impossible to believe on your own, please know that therapy, talking to a professional, is not a sign of weakness. It is the bravest and most adult thing a person who grew up too fast can do, because it is finally asking for help, and asking for help is the one thing the child never got to do. Growing up too fast is a loss. It really is. There is a version of your childhood that didn't happen the way it should have. That is a grief worth sitting with, even just for a moment. But it is not the whole story, because look at who you became. Look at what you can hold. Look at how deeply you care, how fiercely you show up, how clearly you see things that others miss entirely. That didn't come from nowhere. That came from you, from a child who faced something difficult and found a way, their way, to survive it with grace. You carry both the wounds and the gifts. Both are real. Both are yours. And the most healing thing, the simplest and most profound thing, is to go back, in your mind, to that child. The 10-year-old making dinner, the 12-year-old listening to their parent cry, the teenager who never once let themselves fall apart. Look at that child, really look, and say, quietly, whatever feels true, thank you. Thank you for being so strong, for so long, for so many people. You are extraordinary, but you don't have to do that anymore. The adult in me is here now. I will take care of things from here. You can put it down. You can rest. That is not a small thing to offer yourself. That is everything. The road ahead is not about becoming someone new. It is about becoming more fully who you already are. It is about learning to hold that extraordinary strength alongside something softer. A willingness to be seen, to be helped, to be loved, not for what you do, but for who you simply are. That is the journey, and it is worth taking. If something in this video felt familiar, if a moment, a face, a feeling landed somewhere true inside you, I'd love to know. Which part stayed with you the most? The scars, the gifts, or the idea of finally letting that child rest? Share your thoughts in the comments. Every story matters here, and you might say something that helps someone else feel less alone. If this video felt like something worth keeping, please like it and subscribe so we can keep exploring these quiet, important truths together. Until next time, take care of yourself. Not just the capable, reliable, always fine version of yourself. The whole version. The one who is still learning it is safe to need things. That one especially.